Everyone, and welcome to QAHN Scandal Makers worldwide premiere film launch. And I'm going to turn the proceedings over to our executive director, QAHN's executive director, Matthew Farfan. Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Heather. Hello, everyone. As Executive Director of QAHN, I'd like to welcome you all to our online Scandal Makers Film Fest. Since we were founded back in 2000, QAHN has been working to build awareness about cemeteries and cemetery heritage. Our Cemetery Heritage Inventory and Restoration Initiative, CHEERI for short, included a study of at-risk graveyards, conferences on gravestone restoration techniques, and the publication of the handbook Cemetery Heritage in Quebec, our #1 bestseller of all time, which, by the way, has just been reprinted. We've covered the plight of isolated cemeteries in print and online, including the shocking desecration that occurred at one township's graveyard just a few years ago. COVID gave us the opportunity to try something a little bit different. What was initially planned as a film walking tour with Heather Darch, who was my colleague on the old CHEERI project so many years ago, and who had lots of experience with orphan cemeteries during her long tenure at the Missisquoi Museum, evolved into a series of short documentaries on the forgotten cemeteries and some of the unsavory characters buried in them in Missisquoi County. Heather, of course, is a great storyteller, so she was perfect to lead the project, which we ended up calling Scandal Makers. The first 6 films are now available on YouTube. Now, before passing this over to Heather, I thought I'd read a little excerpt from Cemetery Heritage in Quebec. Words, I think, that are still as true today as they ever were. Cemeteries are not merely repositories of the dead, but important pieces of our heritage. There is growing awareness that they represent tangible links to our past, and that to survive, these links need to be cherished by society. Unfortunately, many rural burial grounds are in the process of vanishing altogether. By their nature, cemeteries are unpopulated places. As such, they have always been vulnerable to vandalism, theft, and encroachment by neighboring landowners. But other dangers are ever present: environmental threats, neglect, poor conservation, lack of funds, and lack of able-bodied personnel committed to the cemetery's long-term well-being. Many of these problems have arisen from a general lack of regard for these sites among the public. Regard, however, can't be legislated, it must be learned. There needs to be a concerted effort on the part of all of us to learn about these sites and to better understand their value, both for future generations and for our own sense of who we are and where we come from. Only through education will these sites regain the place in our collective consciousness that they deserve, which is one of the reasons why we've continued with this great series called Scandal Makers. So without further ado, let's go back to the host of Scandal Makers herself, Heather Darch.
Thanks, Matthew. It was truly a wonderful experience making Scandal Makers Series 1 with Thomas Gasser, our videographer. And then to be involved in this series was really wonderful. We were behind the camera instead, which was a nice experience, nice change. And we were able to travel to cemetery sites and communities that we'd never been to before and meet fellow heritage enthusiasts. We began the series in the height and the heat of summer, and we ended it on a very cold fall morning. And each of the sites had its own sort of atmosphere, its own character. One site had a marathon runners running by it all day long. We had pouring rain in another one, the beautiful scent of thyme in a third, and always the constant calling of crows and wind in all of the sites that you'll hear in the films, no doubt. Each site was special in its own way, from the stones, the mourning symbols on the stones, the fencing, the gates, and so many graveyards in the townships. They are abandoned, they're very old, they're neglected, and they need our attention and our care. But the good, the bad, the scandalous are all buried there, and they were people who helped build this beautiful part of Quebec. And we wanted to make the documentaries really entertaining, but they're also very well researched as well. You'll see by our presenters. These were people, the dead that they're speaking about, they were people with jobs and families that had joys and sadness. And unfortunately, they had a bit of scandal in their lives too. So they all offer lessons that we can learn from today. And every stone has a story, and every site has a story as well. So we hope that that by telling these stories, that everyone can become an advocate of cemetery stones and sites, even if you don't know the people who were buried there. In all, we created 6 mini documentaries. So today we're going to show you 3. And so I'm going to introduce our first presenter today. So let's say hello to Kathy Curtis of the Stanstead Historical Society. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. I'm really excited, actually. This is our first international film launching, so it's really quite exciting. And so we're going to present your film. It's called The Legend, and I'm not going to tell any more about it because you tell the story so well. So we'll talk to you after the film. So without further ado, we'll get started with the first film called The Legend.
Hello, my name is Kathy Curtis, and this is a presentation by the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network. I'm standing in Stanstead County in the Eastern Townships of Quebec. Stanstead County was mostly settled by Americans coming from Massachusetts and Vermont, with a majority coming from New Hampshire, and a scattering of people coming from Great Britain, Scotland, and Ireland. They settled here in the late 1700s, and many of the early settlers came to clear the land for farming. At the time, the county was mostly forest, but with the promise of rich soil for farming, a vast majority of it was cleared. Also, with many sources of water and being so close to the border was an added bonus. The first settlers with names such as Cass, Manser, Curtis, Smith, Morrow, Heath, to name a few, and they are all listed on the Pioneer Monument located near Dufferin Heights in Stanstead East, near the Dufferin Heights Golf Club. The villages of Stanstead County include Stanstead, Rock Island, Beebe, Ayrescliff, Dixville, and Ways Mills, to name a few. I'm going to tell you about one of our interesting citizens of Stanstead County who left his mark in our history. His name doesn't appear on the Pioneer Monument, but he is one of our legendary characters. Today we are standing at Lakeview Cemetery in Baldwin's Mills. It's about 10 kilometers south of Quaticook and on the Vermont border. This is the final resting place of Big Jack Garland, a legend in Stanstead County still to this day. Let me tell you his story. Walter James Garland was born in Northamptonshire, England in 1861. He was the son of Walter Garland and Susan Blaine. Part of the legend of Big Jack begins with Jack supposedly being a veteran of the Boer War in South Africa. But I could not find any records to back up this theory, so I think this is part of the legend as well. Another part of his legend was that he was part of an aristocratic family. But according to his cousin, Anne Lewis, nothing could be further from the truth. In the 1881 census, he is listed as a grainer in Chelsea, England at the age of 19. That is a person who works with wood. Jack Garland arrived in Canada on September 30th, 1898, aboard the ship Parisian in Quebec City, before making his way to the Stanstead area. Why did Jack come to Stanstead? To farm, for business opportunities? The reason why Jack immigrated to Canada is a large part of the legend. He was accused of murdering a rival suitor of his fiancée at the time. So his mother, Susan Blaine, sent him to Canada to avoid justice. And according to the story told, she often sent him money through the Christ Church in Stanstead. By now I'm sure you're wondering why the nickname Big Jack. Well, he was a very large man according to legend, anywhere from 6'5" to 7 feet tall, and depending on whose account you go by. He was known to carry 300 pounds of grain on his shoulders with ease. Jack did mostly lumber work and odd jobs he picked up along the way, including being a farmhand, according to the 1911 census. I suppose Big Jack sounded a bit better than Big Walter, but I'm thinking it was probably because he was a lumberjack. Jack married Jenny Stearns of Holland, Vermont, on June 19, 1901. Now, Holland is just over the border from here in Baldwin's Mills. Records show that Jack brought Jenny back to Stanstead County soon after they married and settled in Barnston, a few kilometers down the road from here. At the time of the marriage, Jenny was 26 and Jack was 40, an age difference of 14 years. This could explain a few things further down in our story. There were 5 children born to the Garlands: Henry, Joseph, Margaret, David, and Matilda. The census has the family living in various areas around Stanstead, I suppose where Jack could find work. Unfortunately, at some point, the marriage broke up. From hearsay, Jenny was tired of Jack's wandering ways. I'm not sure if Jack was a ladies' man or just liked the lifestyle of being free. I suppose it must have been a hard life if Jack didn't have steady work with 5 children to feed. From the census, we know that their breakup happened sometime after 1921. I could not find evidence of a divorce, so I'm thinking it was just a separation. Jenny was tired of living that way. After the end of his family life, Jack was known to become a hermit, mostly alone and wandering the roads of the area, hitching a ride where he could. Jack was living the hippie-free lifestyle before it became popular. No worries, no responsibilities, Stanstead's first hippie. Jack was known to be mostly barefoot in the summer, with his long dark beard and hat, and grubby clothing. I guess bathing was not needed when you lived alone. Many stories have been told of Big Jack, but one in particular appeared in the Stanstead Journal. Jack was walking home from Stanstead one very hot July afternoon and passed Crystal Lake Cemetery. The cemetery has a rather large vault and would be very cool and inviting on a hot day. Jack decided to take a nap inside. Who would do that? I cannot imagine being that hot to take a nap in a cemetery vault. Meanwhile, a family decided to stop for a picnic on the vast green grass, spreading a blanket out and getting ready for a cool meal in the shade. Jack, hearing the laughter and the voices, decided to check it out. Coming out of the vault, all 7 feet tall of him, stretching and yawning, was a sight, I am sure. The family was shocked and startled by the figure walking out of the cemetery vault, and apparently did not take very long to pack up and leave. Now, poor Jack, of course, lived alone in a shack between Baldwin's Mills and Stanstead in an area called New Boston. Jack was known to go to Stanstead and buy bags of grain and flour and just leave it open and eat from it when he was hungry, sharing it with all the mice and vermin that also shared his cabin. One cold February morning in 1936, Walter Wood, a neighbor, was walking by and decided to check in on Jack. He found him lying on the floor, very ill. After managing to get him into bed, he called for a doctor, but it was too late. Jack had passed away from either blood poisoning or gangrene to his leg in his 75th year. Jack was laid to rest back in the vault at Crystal Lake until spring, and then he was laid to rest here at Lakeview Cemetery in Baldwin's Mills. Unfortunately, the stone has the wrong death date. According to his death records, Jack passed away February 18, 1936. A Good Samaritan that donated the stone did not have access to the information and probably went by local hearsay. Now, you might be wondering what happened to Jenny. According to census records, Jenny lived with their youngest son David in Boynton, Quebec, near Ariscliffe. Jenny passed away November 2, 1948, and was laid to rest here beside Jack. They parted in life, but are together in death. Why did I pick the story of Big Jack Garland? I grew up here in Baldwin's Mills, and my dad would always tell me when I was afraid during a thunderstorm that it was just Big Jack rolling rocks down the pinnacle. I always wondered, who was this big man? When I began working as the archivist in the archives of the Stanstead Historical Society and began scanning photos, I came across a few photos of a man named Big Jack. There he was in all his glory. Another question, now why was he in J.J. Parker's photo studio in Derby Line, Vermont? J.J. Parker was a prominent and well-known photographer for people on both sides of the border and took photos of many families and events. Thankfully, he did take the time to take Big Jack's photo. Jack may not have been prominent, but a very interesting part of our history. Stanstead in an area called New Boston. Jack was known to go to town and applause.
You said it would happen.
Oh, Jack, don't play tricks on us.
And there you have it. That was wonderful, Kathy. Well done.
Thank you. I didn't realize I was talking so fast.
No, it was great.
It made
It's
me
fun.
tired just listening to me.
No, it's wonderful and
Thank
well
you.
done. And you did not swallow that bug that kept bothering you the entire time. And what people didn't quite hear, maybe we did, was the thunder of dump trucks, constant rumbling of dump trucks in the background. So when you're doing cemetery filming, it has its challenges and includes sound as well. So I'm going to ask all of our presenters today the same question, and then I'll open it up to the audience to see if they have any questions for you. And Kathy, what is it that takes you into heritage cemetery sites? What makes you pull off the road and say, I'm going to go look at a cemetery like this?
I think cemeteries all tell a story. Even if you're not from the area, if you walk through the cemetery and you look at the names and unfortunate causes of death and people that lost so many children, I think it just really tells a story. And the artwork, some of the stones are just so beautiful, and it's peaceful. And like I say, every cemetery has a story.
Very good. Well, I was going to, we'll take some questions. Sorry, I'm just reading something. If I thought we would, after each person's presentation, if somebody has a few questions for you, we'll ask now. And then if there are any comments at the end, we can do it at the end, if that's okay with you, Glenn.
That sounds good. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments.
We had a really great day, the two of us. Well, we had Thomas Gasser as well, who was our videographer. And I'd never been to Baldwin's Mills and didn't realize there was another mountain in the townships called the Pinnacle.
The Pinnacle.
Out my window, I can see the Pinnacle. It's nowhere near your Pinnacle. So it's pretty funny. But we had a delightful time and learning about Big Jack Garland. And I know that you had been in contact with someone from England to find out a bit more about him. I don't know if she's visiting with us today or not, but that's really
I'm not seeing her on here, but just doing Ancestry, I saw that somebody had posted their history. So I took a chance and wrote this lady, and she wrote right back, and we've had wonderful conversations. And she really filled me in on that. No, he was not from aristocratic family. So it was very interesting and fun to share the information.
Now, someone's asked, is the story of Big Jack making thunder just something that you know in your family, or was that a local story that other kids knew about?
I'm not really sure. It was just something my dad always said. And he came to Baldwin's Mills after the war, I think around 1948. So Jack was already dead. So I'm wondering where he must have heard the legend of Big Jack and people, the family talking about him. So I'm not really sure. I never heard of anybody else doing that, but that was my father's thing to make me feel better.
That's neat. And it just shows you how oral history can add to a story as well. Well,
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And
Thank you.
if people think of questions, we'll ask some more at the end.
I see there's one from Margaret Black here. Margaret is wondering, Kathy, how you got into the work that you do.
Totally by accident. I started at the museum in 1998. I was hired to put the cemetery records on computer. And of course, like all historical societies, there was a shortage of money, so they couldn't keep me. But in 2000, the archivist, Betty Brock, wanting to retire, they had me come in and do a 6-month contract to see if I liked it and if I could handle it. I'm not a formally trained archivist. I sort of learned on the job. And I just have a great love of family history and local history. And some of the things I know, I'm not really sure. So I really fell into it by accident. And it's been 21 years and I learned something new every week.
Glenn, Heather, speaking for the museum for a second, I can honestly say that the museum wouldn't be the same without Kathy being there. She's been a great face for all these years, and always very welcoming to people that go in to do research. So
Thank you.
thank you for all that work, Kathy.
Thanks, Matthew.
Indeed. Thank you, Kathy. It was a real pleasure working with you.
It was good time. Many giggles.
Indeed.
Tom was a good sport as well.
Yeah. Hanging out with the old ladies. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. All right. We'll move along then. I'm going to introduce our next presenter and our next film. Our next film is called The Accused, and it's by Anne Ledet. Hello, Anne, and welcome to the worldwide launch of your film.
I'm so excited. Hello, Heather. Hello, everyone. Old ladies, what are you talking about? Young, young, forever young. Cemeteries make us young, really.
Indeed, that's right. We're on this side of the 6 feet, so yeah. Well, we're going to go to Ways Mills Cemetery and meet the accused without further delay, and then we'll talk to you after, Anne.
Hello, welcome to this presentation of the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network. My name is Anne Ledet, and I am a member of the Stanstead Historical Society. Here I am in the Eastern Townships in the lovely cemetery of Ways Mills, some 10 kilometers away from the border with the state of Vermont as the crow flies. This hamlet of Ways Mills takes its name from Daniel Way, born in New Hampshire in 1794. After moving to the Stanstead area with his family in 1819, Daniel Way came here and built a woolen mill in 1843 on the banks of our little river that takes its source at the border and runs for a few kilometers in a northerly direction to Lake Massawippi. A village grew around the mill, first called Wayville and then Ways Mills. Daniel Way died in 1875 and is buried in the cemetery. But though the hamlet bears his name, he was not the first settler in this area. One such early settler was Nathaniel Hollister, a man born in Glastonbury, Connecticut, who first moved to Irisburg, Vermont, with wife and children, and then arrived in this neck of the woods about 1808. One of his sons, Harry Hollister, born in 1805, is the reason why I stand here before you today. Sometime in the early 1830s, Harry Hollister acquired farmland upstream from the future site of Daniel Way's woolen mill, and he dammed the river where it ran across his land and built a sawmill and a grist mill. With those two mills, and later on the woolen mill that would be built by Daniel Way, he had the makings of a village, eventually called Ways Mills. For a while, the border between Canada and the United States of America had remained an ill-defined line, far from a tangible reality. For quite a while, there was unhampered, free circulation of people and goods between the two countries. But with time and the signing of the Washington Treaty in 1842, the border was firmed up, and the good old days of freely crossing the line were technically over. Not surprisingly, activities of contraband and other illicit behavior went on the rise. These townships had a reputation of being a nest of counterfeiters. So the hunt for bandits was on. Many residents of Barnston and Stanstead townships, like Harry Hollister, had entanglements with the law. In April 1848, several persons were arrested and accused of engaging in counterfeiting American money. Spurious banknotes totaling some $20,000 were found on various premises and allegedly on Harry Hollister's land. A considerable amount of base coin, gold and silver, was also discovered, consisting of quarter eagles, Mexican dollars, and American half dollars, together with the implements used in coining, among which were several dies and a machine for stamping coin called the Big Bogus. Harry Hollister was arrested and imprisoned in the Sherbrooke jail to await trial. The Stanstead Journal reported that the honest and law-abiding citizens of Barnston, and there were many such, would rejoice at the breaking up of the haunts of the desperate and lawless men who had long made that township a reproach. Harry Hollister's trial took place in August 1848. Well, the court concluded that the instruments found in the possession of the prisoner were not designed exclusively for counterfeiting, but were often used by machinists for lawful purposes, and that the prisoner himself, Harry Hollister, was a machinist. The jury was instructed to render a verdict of not guilty, which they accordingly did. After 4 months in jail, Harry Hollister was a free man. He was found to be an honest man after all. He must have read the proverb of the Bible, "A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver and gold." Harry Hollister and his friend Daniel Way were indeed esteemed citizens who would run their mills and work together for their fledgling community for many years. Harry Hollister passed away on August 28, 1857, at the young age of 52. He is buried right here. Following Harry's passing, his wife, Mary Ann, conveyed the farm to her son-in-law. He kept the farm, but parted with the mills in 1864. The sawmill was then acquired by Adam Kramer, and his son, Willis Kramer, would operate the mill until his death in 1952. To this day, the older residents of Ways Mills fondly remember swimming, when they were kids, in the pool created by the dam of the sawmill. What fun they had! The dam was since dismantled, and today the river flows freely towards the hamlet of Ways Mills before heading towards beautiful Lake Massawippi. Daniel Way came here and built a woolen mill in 1843 on the banks of our little river that takes its source at the border and runs for a few kilometers, blah, blah, blah.
Yay.
Uh,
There you go, Anne.
well, there you go. Wow.
It's wonderful. And I think you should be very happy with that. We had such a beautiful day at Ways Mills. It was just perfect. There was a wind, of course. Every heritage cemetery you go into, there's a wind. But the site is lovely. It's well cared for. And the story was very interesting. And so why do you go into heritage sites, Anne?
It's an addiction, Heather. I hate to say it. It's a total and absolute addiction. And I have every ounce of admiration for my husband who has followed me into every single cemetery in the neighborhood. I love the stories. Oh, there he is. There's Sam.
Hi.
Well, actually, you know, they're actually very lively things, cemeteries, because you walk along and look at the stones and all these lives of people long forgotten, but it only takes a bit of effort, a little research, and a good friend like Kathy Curtis as an archivist in the museum, or Ancestry and other tools to make them alive again and tell their stories. And they have interesting stories to tell, from which we should all either enjoy or learn, or yeah, I love it.
Yeah, very, very good. I wanted to ask you, Anna, and I never did at the time. Do you think, as a judge, if Mr. Hollister was guilty or not?
Well, I'm no longer a judge, so whatever advice I give here is no. But the mystery should, stay entire, as I stay whole, as I believe. But I can tell you something, that my husband and I walked along the river on our property because we happen to live where the mill used to stand. And I have to admit that we looked for remnants of, you never know, you could find a coin or, something. We found a lot of broken bottles and things like that, but never found the big bogus or any, activities that would suggest illegal counterfeiting. But, we did look.
So perhaps only Mr. Hollister really knows.
Only Mr. Hollister knows, which is just fine.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I don't see that there are any questions at the moment, Anne, but you never know. People will have some comments. I know people have enjoyed everything, including the blooper. So
And blah, blah, blah.
blah, blah, blah.
I have a quick comment for Anne. And I remember you did a story on Mr. Burroughs a few years ago, another famous Townships counterfeiter. You must be getting to be quite an expert on counterfeiting.
That's another, I've always had an attraction to not counterfeiters, but bad people in history. They're always interesting, right? Stephen Burroughs. Yes, the only problem with Stephen Burroughs is that he was not buried in Ways Mill Cemetery. So that was a limit to offering that subject for the scandal makers, in your programming. But Stephen Burroughs lived right on the river and did an amazing amount of counterfeiting with much success until he died a sainted man in Three Rivers in 1840. Scandal makers can become saints, everything is possible.
Yeah, I know Stephen Burroughs influenced the counterfeiters in Missisquoi too, so his reach was very wide. So
absolutely.
There's a question from Mr. Wilcox. Why was Mr. Hollister jailed for so long if he wasn't actually convicted?
Well, actually, that's where politics come in, I can't remember his name now. That I should have checked my notes, but the sheriffs of the county at the time were very much on the British side. Where the people here who were living around the Ways Mills area were descendants of American revolutionary soldiers. They were Republican in mind and in spirit. So that was part of the habeas corpus did not exist, so you could imprison somebody more than 48 hours before getting showing up before a judge. And the judges at the time were very happy to keep these uneducated, free type spirits in prison as long as they could before letting them out. So basically, it was more of a political stance than any legal, contraption.
Wow. A scandal in itself.
A scandal in itself, which was, several articles were written about that by university professors.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Anne. This was
thank
delightful.
you, Heather. It was so much fun.
It was great, and it was great seeing your husband there too, because he was certainly our right-hand man that day for keeping us on track. It was helpful. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you all.
So on we go. We're going to our last presentation today. It was filmed at the Rose Cemetery in Stanstead, and it stars QAHN's president, Grant Myers. Hi, Grant. Grant, unmute. I think you're muted. We have a technical glitch. There we go. Grant. There's Glenn.
Yeah, not the person you're looking for. I see Grant. Grant, can you try saying something? I don't think your microphone is working. Oh, Grant's going to rejoin. So why don't we show his clip first and then we can just talk after?
Perfect. On
Okay,
with the
just
show.
Give me a moment here.
The historical cemeteries of Quebec's Eastern Townships bear witness to over 200 years of human tragedy and triumph. Well, most of the headstones in these places do little to address the anonymity of ancestors long forgotten. Every so often, there is one descriptive enough to bring the past to light. My name is Grant Myers, and I'm here with you today on behalf of the Quebec Anglophone Heritage Network. The Rose Cemetery, a few kilometers from the border town of Stanstead, Quebec, contains a very special headstone. American Eliezer Albee, aged 79 years, was buried here on August 28, 1864, and left this message for posterity. He went into voluntary banishment from his beloved native country during the Reign of Terror in the third year of the misrule of Abraham I. The Abraham referenced on the headstone is Abraham Lincoln, hero of the American Civil War and emancipator of over 4 million enslaved people. Mr. Albee left the United States at the height of the Civil War because he disagreed with Lincoln and the prosecution of the war. Eliezer Albee was born into an old New England family in the shadow of the American Revolution on June 19, 1785, in Rockingham, Vermont. His was the first generation born into the optimism and promise of an independent nation, free of the constraints of colonial rule. Throughout his life, Eliezer was active politically, first in his town and later as a representative to the state legislature. Indeed, he is recognized as one of the architects of the Constitution of Vermont. What the historical record also tells us is that throughout his life, Mr. Albee was deeply committed to a vision of America that favored the primacy of state authority and a limited role for the federal government in the lives of citizens. This view stood opposed to another school of American political thought that suggested that a strong central government was the only way to protect the interests of the fledgling republic. When the first shots of the American Civil War were fired at Fort Sumter on April 11, 1861, Americans in both the North and the South lined up along these competing views of the nation's future. Many Northerners, like Eliezer Albee, believed that the federal prosecution of the war was unjust and contravened the constitutional rights of the states to self-determination. Those that shared Eliezer's views were called Copperheads, after the poisonous snake native to the southeastern United States. During the war, like many northern states, Vermont was firmly Republican and stood by Lincoln in the war. In the newspapers of the day, Copperheads and Copperhead sympathizers were reviled and branded as traitors, and there was likely nowhere to hide. This was an era when one's political affiliation and one's vote was a matter of public record. While it is uncertain whether Eliezer feared violence from his neighbors or imprisonment from the federal authorities, or both, what is clear is that life in the United States had become unbearable. Mr. Albee arrived in Canada in the winter or spring of 1864. Certainly the decision to exile in Stanstead County was made because he had family here. His older sister Sarah and her husband Timothy Rose had immigrated to the country more than half a century earlier and eventually settled on the land surrounding this cemetery. When Eliezer arrived in Stanstead, Sarah and Timothy were long deceased, but their son, George Henry Rose, lived on the family farm. Undoubtedly, Eliezer stayed with George in his time in Canada. Eliezer Albee never returned to the United States, dying a few short months after his arrival in Stanstead. In many ways, I see Eliezer Albee as a tragic figure, an elderly, bitter, and disillusioned man hanging on to a vision of America that was quickly fading away. I'll try that again. When Timothy arrived in...
No.
No.
Who's Timothy?
Timothy's the brother-in-law. Sorry, I'm really sorry.
And that's the Copperhead. And hopefully you're there, Grant.
Well, let's give it a try. Can you hear me now?
Yes, great. You just need to show your face.
Oh, there you go. I'll get on film or on video. Geez, I'm dating myself. There we go.
Okay, excellent. That's wonderful. I don't think people could tell by the film, but the heavens opened up just as we were finishing, and it poured, and the entire day was filmed in between runners going by, a marathon that usually is on a very quiet road, but we had
cheering
nonstop.
and cheering people. Lots
Yeah.
of cheering people.
Cheering, a police car.
Honking horns.
Oh
Yes,
my
that's
gosh, it was crazy. So that's why you
Mhm.
never know what you're going to find in a heritage site. But that day was that was quite busy, for sure.
Yes, usually that road is deathly quiet.
Yeah. Da-dum-bum. Grant, what brings you into heritage cemeteries? What attracts you to them?
Well, I've had a bit of an addiction for historical mysteries, and cemeteries are just enablers for me. Yeah, very much like Anne.
Very good. There's a question from someone who said, they're wondering to know if you know anything why there's this really strange, interesting lineup of tombstones, and what's the explanation for that? I know Matthew
Yes,
Farfan likes to say that everybody died in order, which was really very helpful.
As far as I can tell, it was a result of well, I know it was a result of what we might call a well-intentioned but somewhat misguided restoration of the cemetery. That I believe, if the newspapers of the day are correct, happened sometime in the early 1960s.
Do you know who upkeeps the cemetery itself?
I think it's a Crystal Lake Association. Is that true, Matthew?
Yes, it is. And I think you're correct about that. That was a work bee back in the day, 50, 60 years ago. And I think the feeling at that time was that making things neat and tidy, maybe resetting the stones into cement bases was the thing to do, rather than leaving them tossed over in the weeds, which was the condition that it was in back in those days.
And it probably did save some of the headstones, because the very earliest ones are of I guess it would be slate or shale, some kind of sedimentary stone, and it really tends to split when water infiltrates and it freezes. So that might have been although I'm not thrilled with the restoration, it probably did save some of the stones, at least.
The information's been maintained. Yeah, we just don't know where the bodies are buried. Right. Who supports? Who looks after the Crystal Lake Association? Maybe Kathy knows that. No, I don't think anybody can answer that one. Who, Keith, who asked the question?
Yeah,
I can.
Crystal Lake.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Crystal Lake Cemetery is made up of about 14 different cemeteries, with Crystal Lake being the main. It's an association. It's supported. My husband is the secretary. I'm on the board. It's supported by donations and investments, and it's a constant fundraising. And but we have two wonderful caretakers who take care of it. And from my understanding, exactly what Matthew said, I think the early 60s, things were falling apart. They went and put all the stones correctly. That's not exactly, I don't think, where the bodies are, but the stones are there. They're and some of them are very, very delicate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody literally knows where the bodies are buried.
Right.
Well,
I don't think so. There's, like any other country cemetery, they didn't keep correct records like for Crystal Lake. So it's kind of a guessing thing.
There are distinct depressions in the earth that are obvious obvious burials, but whether they can be matched with the the records would be difficult, short of excavating the cemetery and finding evidence that way. Of course, you could determine the age, relative age of the burials there, using various anthropological techniques. But you know.
Here's a question for you, Grant, from Vicky.
Yes.
It's the first time I hear about slavery partisans emigrating to Canada because of Lincoln's policy. Do you know about other US immigrants to Canada because of this reason?
There was an interesting book written, I think it was around 204, 206, by an American academic on copperheads. And it was the first study of the copperhead movement since the 1950s. And I think I referenced it in the closing credits to the film. Anyway, they estimate that there were at least a few 100,000 people that made their way to Canada, deserters and otherwise, because they were displeased with the political situation in the U.S. There's also reference in the Confederate papers to Jefferson Davis, his memoirs or papers, writings, what have you, to the fact that Confederate agents were very active in the U.S. because of this problem. And several $1 million was actually allocated by the Confederate state to intelligence among the dissidents that found their way to Canada. So
Okay,
it's substantial, but no one is really able to measure the extent of it. But the guess is that several 100,000 deserters, political dissidents, what have you, made their way to Canada. Some really feared for their lives because of accusations of treason, and of course treason at that time, as it is in many countries today, I think in the U.S. as well, potentially subject to capital punishment, as they say.
Wow. I can only imagine how angry he must have been, though, to have that text on his tombstone. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, the big myth was you're welcome, Vicki. The big myth was, of the northern states is that they were united, and the people of the North were united in their opposition to the Confederate states and to slavery. But if you go back and you look in the newspapers of the day and the writings of the day, you notice very quickly that was far from true. There was considerable sympathy for the North, even among prominent Northern politicians. And, many like Eliezer Albee felt that if the Southern states had freely entered the Union, then they should be able to freely leave.
Keith asked another question. Does anyone know anything about the legalities about the abandoned cemeteries and who owns them? That may be something that Matthew can answer, because I know it's in his book that I'll tell you about in just a moment.
Yeah, there's every cemetery has a different situation, Keith. It's surprising, actually. Some of them are private property. A lot of early family plots are actually they're the property of the landowner. Now, amazingly, the landowner in general owns what's above the ground, so that's why a lot of these old graveyards are disappearing. They end up getting bulldozed. What the landowner cannot do is dig up what's under the ground, so you're not allowed to dig up the bodies unless you get I think it's an order from a judge allowing you to do that. Some of them have their own lots, so they're on the cadastral plan, and maybe long ago they had someone looking over them, and legally speaking. Some of those owners have died off and the associations have disappeared. So it's a bit of a trick getting title. There is a complicated way to do it. And we do talk a little bit about it in that handbook. Fitch Bay is a good example. There's an old graveyard in Fitch Bay. It's called the Hilltop Cemetery. It is on the cadastral map. It's a beautiful early cemetery with very early slate stones in it, which have survived. The Taplins are buried there, the very first settlers in this area. And I believe that cemetery is now kind of been taken under the wing of the other cemetery in Fitch Bay. So I think that's the case with Crystal Lake too. Kathy can probably attest to that. A lot of these cemeteries were what they used to call orphan cemeteries because who knows who owns them. No one really wants to take care of them. It's work getting the grass cutters and fixing the stones. There's a ton of work and costs money. And if you want to do it properly, it takes time. So in Crystal Lake's case, they were great. They took over a dozen of these little graveyards that had been kind of left to the elements under their wing and have been doing a pretty good job of it over the years. And there are other community groups. There's one in Barnston that manages a number of these cemeteries. So it's really about community people stepping up and looking after them to make sure they preserve them.
Yeah, I know the Missisquoi Historical Society looks after 18 abandoned sites, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of money, and fortunately they have someone right now who's willing to cut grass, but that's all they do, and they mark the site that it's if you have any questions or concerns, you can contact the Historical Society, but there's so little money to do anything really to protect the stones, although they are recorded and photographed and that sort of thing. So. And I guess a private owner can, well, I know in Missisquoi, someone just took the stones away because they were in the way of what they wanted to have as a garden. So the remains weren't dug up, but the stones are gone. So
every so often we hear these horror stories about people removing the stones and using them as front steps or patio stones. And when we bought our house here in Stanstead, we actually we had tombstones in the carriage house, which we think came from one of the old graveyards when they moved it years and years ago. It's really a problem, especially on these little country plots where people there's just no one looking after them, and the ground, the property owners around them are chipping away at the borders. There's no fence, so where does the edge of the cemetery end? It's really takes a lot of vigilance if we're going to preserve them.
As you know, Matthew, are there any funding sources to help with the preservation of cemeteries?
Not a lot.
I know.
Not a lot. It's some local towns are designating them as historic sites, which opens up the funding avenue locally. They have to be pretty significant to get, provincial money. Like possibly if somebody really important is buried there.
There's also the MRC, the Municipalité Régionale de Comté, like QAHN. I mean, they organize tours of cemeteries, and that's helpful in making them known. And money can come probably that way as well, subsidies from the municipal table de concertation culturelle, Municipalité Régionale de Comté, and things like that.
That's true. QAHN has done a pretty good job, the MRC, in recent years, raising the awareness, because there are some beautiful country graveyards in that part of the townships.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know there are some groups that will do their own fundraising and have fundraising projects, tea in the cemetery, that sort of thing, to try to raise money to protect their local sites. So it's a bit of a patchwork, I think, out there right now, unfortunately.
The best organized ones are really the ones that have a cemetery association attached to them. And QAHN has a number of member organizations that are cemetery associations. So those are the ones that are organized and tend to have a bit more funds in their coffers. Not always, though.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't see any other questions. Glenn, am I missing anything? They come in
No,
pretty quickly.
just a lot of great comments. So I just want to
Yeah.
thank everyone that shared comments. It's clearly touched on something that a lot of people care about, and I just think I know it's really great to see this kind of momentum building online through these sorts of events and communities and initiatives.
Well, that's exactly what the Scandal Maker series was to do, was to be entertaining, but also to get people aware of all the wonderful little sites that we have. In this case, it's across the townships, but it's right across Quebec. And so it's a great initiative set forth by QAHN, I think, to do this sort of thing, to get people talking and asking questions. And so I'll bring the day to a close by saying, firstly, thank you to all of you for attending. Thank you to Canadian Heritage for the support of this project. And as Matthew mentioned before, there's this great booklet called Cemetery Heritage in Quebec, a handbook, and it's by Matthew Farfan, who is a great supporter of heritage sites and cemeteries. It covers things like title issues and cemetery law, the cleaning and conservation of stones, fundraising, how to recruit volunteers. So things that you might be really interested in your own historical societies, or if you decide you'd like to get a chapter going yourself to protect a site nearby your own house. It's available for $20, postage and handling included. If you're a QAHN member, it's $15. And you can order it through PayPal or e-transfer, and you can go to the Quebec website to find out more information. I suppose too, just a good old-fashioned check would work as well. We'll take that. Thank you very much to our movie stars, our heritage advocates, Kathy Curtis, Anne Leday, and Grant Myers. It was a pleasure working with the three of you, and thank you so much for introducing me personally to the wonderful sites that you showed Thomas and myself. But and for today's event, it was wonderful. Thank you to Thomas Gasser, our videographer. Thanks to Glenn Patterson, our digital media project director, who keeps all of our online programming like this running fairly smoothly. So it's great. Thank you to everyone today who joined us for our first launch of our Scandal Maker series part 2. All of the films in the series, including our first series and now all 6 of this series, will be available on QAHN's YouTube page. And I think you can just Google QAHN, YouTube, Scandal Makers, and you'll find it. The links will probably be on our website as well. And thank you to all of you again, but just a quick plug for our Heritage Talk series is about to begin. Our new series on February 3rd at 7 o'clock. You can find out all the information on our QAHN's Facebook page and website, as well as Heritage Talk's Facebook page. You don't need a Facebook page of your own. You can just go to the public site and you can click the Zoom link if you'd like to join us on Zoom. So as they say in Hollywood, that's a wrap for our film series. And have a great afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much again.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather.
And thanks to Tom as well. Thomas as well.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks, Heather.
Bye
Bye.
now.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.